All right. Welcome to Eight Questions with. I'm your host, Patrick. I'm Have Cheetah Will View. And yeah, welcome to the show. Uh it's an 8:30 start for us tonight. For our guest, nationally known comic Phil Johnson here will be with us. This will be my first time that I interviewed a stand-up comedian. But luckily for me, it happens to be an old friend of mine from back home, and Phil Johnson. Uh, Phil and I used to be walk the same circles. He was in a band and he was a rock musician, and of course I was a talent buyer, so we got to see each other quite a bit. Um, Phil is one of the nicest human beings that I met. Actually, I met so many nice people in the music business. It's unbelievable when I think about it. Uh, Wow, the community is popping tonight. So I am hoping that we get a few heads in here. I know that over on GCAP, they're watching Mac and me. And I don't know if anybody's going to survive that alive, nor to come over here, but we'll see. Uh, so Phil's in a rock band called Roadside Attraction. And of course, and then later on, I found out that he had become a stand-up comedian, and he tours the country. He's been on TV shows. He's shared the stage with people like Drew Carey, and probably a host of other well-known names that you guys know about that I don't. Hey, Stephen, how are you, sir? Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's probably a good reason why we haven't heard that in a long time. Um, so this will be my first time, like I said, talking to a stand-up comedian. Phil has become really well known. Um, Holy cow! Okay, there we go. See you later, Marion. Uh, Not too bad. Uh, Not too bad. Um, he played with us at the Edge. His band played with used to play they used to play the Cactus uh at first. I don't think I ever booked Phil's band. I would have to double check with him, but I don't think I ever none at Marsugi's. At at the Edge, yes. Me and Jimmy both. And then later on, I heard that like I said, he was a stand-up comedian. He's toured the country several times, and we'll be talking about the state of comedy in this country because I don't know why, I just got a feeling that comedy is, it's gone through it's gone through its bumps. People like Lenny Bruce, Richard Pryor, uh, George Carlin. I mean, every time they came out, there was always controversy around their routines, and they looked like maybe they were, people were going to be able to handle what they were dishing out, and so, but it seems like this time to me the bumps are more serious. Like you really have to watch your P's and Q's to when you get on stage. But we're going to be talking about that. We're talking about how what's it like touring, some of the terms for comedy. I actually used to watch a lot of comedy. Um, I used to watch a lot more. I still do. I've reviewed a couple of documentaries on comedy on my blog. I like the art form. I think it's funny. I think it's great. Um, yeah, tonight he'll be sitting down. That's for sure. Um, so we're going to be talking a little bit about that and what he's been doing. Otherwise, what else he's been doing during the last couple of years with the pandemic, and the last 20 years since him and I saw each other was probably 1999. All right. This begins the last week of February here, as we are heading toward Women in the Horror Month in March. In March, we are trying to bring you 15 interviews with 15 different ladies that have their feet in horror. It's a fun task, and let me tell you, uh, it's pretty hard. It's actually harder than I thought it'd be. We also, but we still got this week to go yet. So tomorrow night, we will be welcoming Roy and Becky. Roy and Becky from Roy and Becky's Adventures will be here with us. Travel Adventures will be with us. Um, and then on Thursday, we have our own Phil, Creepy Vids, will be here with us. And he'll talk to us about his start in horror. And we'll get a chance to look over some of his great collection. He's got one of the best collections in the horror community that I know of. But it's definitely one of the best I know. And so we'll take a look at that. But when Women in Horror Month starts in March, so you know what that means. I'm actually able to bring out a calendar now. I'm actually bringing out the calendar. I have not really said anything what's going on in March because I really don't know. That's how where it's at. I didn't really know. So next Tuesday, the 1st of March, we decided to start off with a bang, and we invited our own Jennifer Touchy to come in and sit with us to be interviewed. Um, Jennifer's been around for a long time now, and she's really blossoming as a co-host of the Midnight Hour. And she just recently appeared on another podcast talking about 80s vampires movies. She was a guest on Donna Nelly's podcast to talk 80s vampires. That's amazing. I'm so happy. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I can't wait to hear it. Um, so she'll be here with us to kick off Women in Horror Month. March 2nd, we have the actress Tatiana Mar- Maranovic, who is starring in a new movie, a new film called No Tears in Hell. She'll be here with us on Wednesday, March 2nd. On the 3rd of Wednesday, we have actress Dolores Wheeler will be here with us, and that will lead us off to our first week of Women in Horror Month. I'm going to keep the rest of it close to the vest as we get closer to the month. Then I'll release it. But that's what I got for the first week. A lot of fun, interesting guests for sure. Let's see. I should try to share this out and see if I think I'm just started. My time is going to be a little late today. Uh, wow. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Well, I'm sort of speechless today. Sort of speechless. Uh, it's 53 degrees. Holy cow! It's spring is here today. So the rain came today. They wiped out all of our snow. So I'm thinking, well, that's great. That's the end of the winter. Now they're saying that we might get another snowstorm, which will actually be our third biggest one, third big storm we've gotten. They're saying it might drop off a few more inches on Friday. So it looks like winter's trying best to hang around with this. Um, yeah. So if you're in the room, say hi. Let us know you're here. Let us know you're alive. Hmm. Uh, Oh yeah, this Sunday, the 27th, we'll see the kickoff of the Midnight Society, we are kicking off our look at Friday the 13th, which is happening at 9 o'clock on Al Lucard's channel. We're going over there to kick off the series, and then we'll be back on March 6th. We'll be back here to look at Friday the 13th Part 2. That will be on my channel, and then Part 3 will be on Karen's channel. We're going to rotate channels for every episode that we do of this. The real challenge to do a show like the Friday the 13th retrospective is actually trying to find something new that you guys don't know about. And I truly am going to be hard pressed to come up with anything that someone doesn't know about. It seems like everybody knows Friday the 13th front and back. Greetings. Glad you're here. This might be a tough crowd. This might be a tough crowd tonight. I think there's a lot of activity going on in the community. So this might be a hard show tonight. I started off a little late because our guest couldn't be here till 8:30. So we pushed it back for 30 minutes. But there's a lot going on. So and of course we can't even talk spring training either because they're all locked out. So that really sucks too. But I do got something to tell you though, JK. Check this out. So the Yankees hired a new broadcaster. They hired Cameron Maben as a broadcaster. He's supposed to work about 20 to 30 games this year for the Yankees. And Michael Kay said they did a simulation game, did a couple of simulation games. And Michael Kay said that he is a natural born broadcaster. And you know what? I'm glad he's doing it. I'm glad the Yankees did the right, of course, if I had my first druthers as far as seeing a brand new broadcaster, if they could handle it, I would still love to see if someone would hire Curtis Granderson. That would be my wish. But Cameron Maben, that's a good person to do. He really liked being with the team. He really didn't want to go. He really liked being with the Yankees. He liked the pinstripes. He liked the culture. So I'm glad the Yankees. I know the Yankees. They had to let him go, and because of free agency or whatnot. But for the time he was here, I thought he did a really nice job. Now, let's see. So, well, he'll be here in about a couple of minutes. I don't know that much about stand-up comedians now. I mean, I know some of the ones I followed before back in the day, but other than some of the ones I've seen on, I've watched on Comedy Central, the roast, I don't know that many at all. At all, I don't know. Like, I saw some of the posters that Phil, some of the comedians that he appeared on with, and honestly, it's just like music. I don't really know that much about what's going on right now, as far as that go. There he is. Yeah, hey Phil, hey Rick, how are you, sir? This might be a tough one tonight. Just letting you know, this might be a little rough because everybody's got something to do tonight, and I started the show late, so yeah, I'm not sure who's gonna show up. So glad you're here. I was just saying, I don't know many of the comedians that are big names now. The guys getting the comedy specials or stuff like that. I have no idea who is. I'm sort of disconnected that way. So I know there's still a few I guess there's still a few comics out there still working. Um, I don't know who do you do you know any comics? I mean, do you know any comedians that are lighting it up now? Oh, you're frying fish. All right, that sounds good. You gotta love that. Now, did you catch it, or did you fish Lake Supermarket, or did you catch it? That's one of our jokes around here. People say, "I'm going to have fish. I'm going to go fishing." Then you ask them, "Are you going over to Lake Kroger or Lake Meyer?" Look at that. See, look at me. I'm trying to be a comedian. I better leave that to the professional. All right. Let me see if I can generate anybody at all here. Oh, do. Uh, Too late.
Hey, hey,
Hey, hey.
how are you?
Doing okay. Doing all right.
That's good.
Um, yeah, just looking outside. It's sort of weird. We can it tells us what time what our temperature is out there, and here it is now. I'm looking down at it at 8:30 here at night, and it's like 53 degrees here. It's just like, wow, that's the warmest day we've had in quite a while.
See, now here in California, it's actually cold today, but it's the same temperature.
No, I don't think it's we it might be a little, it might feel a little chilly, but see, we had rain today, so it
It
pretty
actually
much
says
wiped out.
it's 46 here, so it's a little chillier
Wow.
here. We had hail
Yeah.
this morning. My girlfriend works at a university here, and they because they know they have California students and faculty, they actually sent out a letter that said it's going to be cold today. Wear a jacket and some scarf and maybe some gloves. Like they have to instruct people. Hey,
Wow.
don't go outside in flip flops and shorts today, stupid.
Yeah, you know what, actually though, if you think about it, in California, you sort of want to, you're right. It's sort of silly they would have to even say something like that. But at
But
the
they
same
do.
time, you don't really want, like, the last place you want to be right now in the world is a hospital. You
Yeah,
don't
for
want to be
sure.
there. I mean, you don't want to be there in the first place, but it's even more so. Um, it's I saw this line a long time ago before life changed, and it was on a show, and the doctors told the patient, says, we like having you as a patient, but the worst place you could be is here in the hospital, because most people here in the hospital die of infections. They die from not from what brought them in, but what they catch. So the best thing to do when you're in the hospital is get your ass in and get your ass out. Uh, Oh, okay. Okay. This worked yesterday, I promise. This is not a gag. This isn't a gimmick. Uh, there he is. Let's go get him.
Sorry about
Oh,
that. I accidentally unplugged a thing when I moved my desk.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, actually, we do sometimes in the beginning of the show we always get a little glitchy, but you're coming through crystal clear.
Good, good. I'm
Uh,
glad. Yeah, I accidentally unplugged something. Was all my fault.
okay. So, how you, man? It's been a long time since I've talked to you.
It has
I
been a
don't think
long
I
time.
talked to you. I know it's the last. Do you remember the last time that you and I saw each other? I do.
I don't know about saw each other. I remember you were managing some singer for a while, and I did a little graphics project or a video project or something for you. That's what I remember.
Well, I was at the Edge.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. That would have been the last time. Yeah, was it?
Yeah,
Good Lord, was it that horrible Dio show? Was that?
yeah. I'm gonna sit there. You know what? That we'll talk about that because it happens a lot more than you realize.
Yeah, I'm
It
sure.
really
Yeah.
does. It really does. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because it's actually quite disrespectful. And I can tell you, the most people that are, I know a lot of the bands think they're on stage, and that's happening to them, and they feel like they're the most embarrassed people in the building. But they're not.
You
They're
know,
not.
I didn't even feel that way. It was just very surreal in the time. I'd never been, booed by a room full of 1,000 people before, and it's one of only 2 times I've ever been booed off a stage. The other one was I was playing a soul food restaurant in Pinole that hated me, and I took my $50 and went home. But yeah, it was just we just found it very surreal. More than I wasn't necessarily embarrassed. I knew it wasn't our fault necessarily.
No.
But I mean, I did have to explain it to bookers around town for the next year what happened.
Well,
But it was an adventure, that's for sure.
what's funny is a lot of times I've seen that happen a couple of times. I had a one band even quit on me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they quit their performance. But that was sort of my fault though um, because I booked a Canadian band to come on in. They're a nice Canadian alternative rock band
Uh-huh.
called the Asexuals, and they were touring on a record and whatnot. And it was on a Wednesday night. I only had 2 acts. I had an opener, and then I had them. I didn't expect anything. I didn't expect much.
Uh-huh.
But then I got a call from this band called Babyland,
I've
and
heard of
they
them.
needed
Yeah.
a date. They needed a date really, really bad. And so I said, okay, you can come on in and play. You know. And then they said we're an industrial band. I said, okay. You
Uh-huh.
know. And oh my Lord, I saw them. I'm like, okay. Phil is probably one of the top 20 Marsugi shows bands I've ever saw. I mean, people came out to see the Asexuals, and then Babyland was there, and they just completely blew them away.
Really?
And, oh, it was terrible. I was sitting there, I was like, I was on one hand, I'm going like, this band is fucking amazing, and the other hand, I'm going like, how do you follow that?
Sure. Yeah.
And so Babyland got them. They were very quick. I mean, they played their set. They got set up quick. They played their set. They broke down fast. I
Mm.
mean, for an industrial band, all the equipment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, holy crow, how are you going to be able to, because when I saw the stuff, I'm like, you only got a 30, 40, 40-minute set. And I'm going, oh,
Uh-huh.
we'll get it in there. We watch. And they
Yeah.
did. So here comes my headliner, the Sexuals, the well-known band.
Uh-huh.
There's people did actually show up to see them. But the people that did saw Babyland, and here they are. They're setting up to go and play,
Uh-huh.
and I think they're only like 10 minutes behind. Not much. And and so they got on there and they started playing, and the whole crowd was basically, there's like 25, 30 people at their time,
Hmm.
and they're all around Babyland and buying shirts and getting merch, and these guys are playing in front of like a groupie. And they played the middle of the third song. They stopped. They quit.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my
they quit.
gosh.
They said the guitar player broke a string,
Uh-huh.
and that
With
killed
a
the whole
wire
thing.
cutter.
Yeah, with a wire cutter. Yeah, they just quit.
Oh man.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything at all. I just paid them what I owed them, and I didn't say, because I felt responsible. I felt like holy, because I would never have booked those two together.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of a
That's the thing. I mean,
mismatch.
knowing, I didn't know who they were. I was just, Marsugi's tradition was you helped out touring bands when you could.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, if I would never have booked them to play in the same bill, never.
Yeah.
And so I still, but I mean, what's funny? It's like I paid them. They went ahead and left, and then I was able to actually go back to the Babyland and go like, oh my God, you guys fucking ruled. Because I couldn't do that with the other band there, I couldn't like,
Sure. Yeah.
it's like, but yeah, the last time you and I saw each other was the show that Jimmy put together for me to
Oh
go.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. 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 I remember that now.
yeah, that was the last show.
I do
Um,
miss that club.
yeah, man, that's one thing I have to remember too. Like, I know I didn't ever have you play at Marsugi's. I know you played Cactus Club more than you played for because I wasn't doing. I
Yeah.
mean, you were doing that. Then you were working for Jimmy at One Steps, and then
Right. Yep.
then he brought. He was between you and Mystic Rage. You two, I think you two guys were his favorite rock bands, local rock bands. I mean,
he was in a small crowd then.
well, you know what it was is like he knew what it was that you guys make good music.
Uh-huh.
You make good music. Um, you worked really hard. You promoted even harder.
Mm,
You weren't afraid to, like I can't tell you how many times I see you on the streets passing out flyers, working it and
yep.
whatnot. I mean, you just stuff like that just sticks with you, like,
Sure. Yeah.
when Jimmy said, well, who should we get to play for Dio? And he goes, I'm going to bring in Russ. I'm going to bring Phil in, have him play. And sometimes, like you said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I thought it would work. I mean, I knew
Yeah.
you guys weren't like, but you know what? Who is? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
not very many people about is Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah. The
Uh,
funny part to me was that we did finally win them over with our last song, which was a song that shouldn't have played well in that room. It was like a Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of jam called Love Makes You Stupid, which looking back was probably the first hint of humor in my music was that song. And yeah, we won the crowd over with that, and then we left. And I remember Dio waited 2 hours to come on stage that night, which we thought was hilarious.
yeah, yeah, considering.
Yeah.
But I was going to say the bands that when a band gets heckled or booed off stage, the people that are most embarrassed are actually the headliners.
Yeah, I would think so.
They
I would
really
think so.
are. They are back there and they are hanging their heads because they know that could be them.
Yeah.
They know that that's no fun and it sucks. And
I've seen people opening for me in comedy clubs who are having a tough time. And whether that's somebody I brought in or whether somebody the club booked to open for me, yeah, it's tough to watch. There are times where I've had openers where I go, nah, the crowd's right on this one. But it's still hard to watch. Also because I know I got to go clean up that mess after and win that crowd back for myself too. But yeah,
right.
it's always hard to watch the openers have a tough time with the audience for sure.
So before we got into the comedy aspect of it, because believe me, I was really surprised. I really was. I mean, like I said, like I told you on the pre-show, it's like having a show of hidden talents. Like, oh, I didn't know you knew how to do that. I didn't know you knew how to do that. It was just like, what?
Yeah.
All these people with all these great talents, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to talk about it. So you played rock music. How long was the Roadside? I mean, as far as a viable unit, how long was a Roadside Attraction? You guys played for at least at least 5 or 6 years that I know about.
Yeah, I mean, we officially started in 93. So 93, I think, was our first gig at the Cabaret, man. It was such a fun club.
Oh.
Such a badly run club, but a fun place to play. And so, yeah, 93. And then I cycled through various band members and, all that kind of stuff. And the last, I do still play with the guys when I can. Most of the time, I still use the name. I still record under the name because I have a trademark on it, so I have to keep using it. But I think the last time we played together would have been 2015 or 16 in my third comedy special. I had the band on with me at the end of the show to do some songs. So I did 45, 50 minutes of stand-up and then brought the band on. to do the songs at the end, and that was super fun. But we did a concert film in 2007. We haven't really like gigged as a band since maybe 2007 late, or maybe 2008, I think.
You don't see yourself going back to it, do you?
I would love to. It's just so difficult to make any money doing it. And it's hard to tour. It's hard to book a show. I mean, the scene around here in the Bay Area for bands is so tough now.
Yeah.
To get people out, to get to half the venues have closed. We don't have the Paradise Lounge anymore. The DNA I don't think exists anymore. The Cactus Club is gone. There's just not that many places to play. And there's so many more places I can do comedy. It's easier to tour as a comedian. If somebody calls me in the afternoon and says, "Hey, can you do a set tonight?" I can say yes without having to ask 7 other people about it,
Right.
and get the buy-in. So as much as I love playing with my band, because they're all fantastic players, it's just not it's not as viable as a business. And so we do it when we can, and other than that, I perform solo.
Uh, what did you now obviously with comedy you must have had this in the back of your mind when you were growing up. I mean, did you see it? Were you like the class clown the entire time you were in school,
No.
or were you
um,
like,
I was always a stand-up fan. When I was a kid, I listened to Robin Williams live at the Met. I knew that album word for word. Sore subject, man. I used to listen to all the old Bill Cosby stuff, which is cringe now. And actually, Debbie Kamau Bell had a new documentary on Showtime about Bill Cosby and about the conflict as a comedian dealing with Bill Cosby, and for him dealing with it as an African American, and how do you reconcile all that. But Bill Cosby himself, the dentist bit and the cake bit and all that, was a scream when I was a kid. And so I was always a stand-up fan. Adam Ferrara I was a big fan of. Bob Nelson I was a big fan of. Bob Goldthwait I was a big fan of. Never thought I'd be doing it in a million years. It was never part of the plan. I I was going through a changeover of band members again, and I'd split up with the guys I'd been playing with for 4 or 5 years, which would be the lineup that you were familiar with, of Tim and Ronnie and Raphael and those guys. And I was just kind of dumping songs out of my head and onto my recorder, and I wrote a couple of funny songs that the other guys had never been into the idea of putting any humor in the songs. They were very serious about the whole thing. And I like to goof around. I was never the class clown. I like to goof around in a very controlled environment. And
right?
I wasn't a troublemaker or anything. So I wrote a couple of funny songs, and I was studying with a mentor in the music industry at the time. His name was Tim Sweeney, and Tim would put together conventions in Las Vegas. Do you know Tim?
I've heard of Tim Sweeney's name. Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. But yeah, so I was studying with Tim, and he had put together a convention in Las Vegas of a bunch of indie musicians, and learning how to market ourselves, and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff you saw me doing was because Tim Sweeney was smacking me in the head on a regular basis to do it. And so we were sitting around the pool one night in this casino in Vegas, and just playing songs for each other. And I played a song for everybody called Whale Blubber, which is a love song. And the next morning they said, "Hey, that Whale Blubber song, that was really funny, and we can't get it out of our heads, and that's what you should be doing." And I was like, no, that's B-side stuff. That's goofing around. And they were like, "No, seriously, we can't get the stupid song out of our heads." And so my cohort of friends in that organization and Tim himself started encouraging me to lean in that direction. Tim started encouraging me to do solo gigs, which I didn't want to do because I just found the guys I wanted to play with. And he was like, so I said, all right, I'll do half solo gigs, half band gigs. And within 6 months, I was doing 90% solo gigs and
No,
10% band gigs.
Solo gigs meaning comedy, or solo gigs meaning acoustic shows?
Acoustic shows. So I started playing coffee houses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had these couple little funny songs, and I had my catalog of serious songs. And I started, cracking jokes as part of the intros of the songs, and I would regularly forget lyrics. That was a common occurrence, and so I would start making jokes whenever I forgot the words to a song, and the laughter becomes very addictive very quickly. And so I started kind of leaning towards that direction musically, where, okay, well, I can sing Whale Blubber, and I can sing Two of Me and Hillbilly Love and some of these little goofy songs I'd come up with. Um, and the band at that time was also sort of, they liked that direction of it. They thought that was cool, that we could, sing a song called Brown Ring Around the Collar and have a wild arrangement for it that was fun and funny. And so we had already started doing some of that. So I got, did you ever meet Groovy Judy?
I've heard that name too. I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever met her, but I know
Okay,
the
so
name.
Judy's been a friend of mine for years, and she was part of that whole Tim Sweeney crew too. And she said, "Hey, there's this place in San Francisco called the Hyena Theater where they're doing a comedy music show." And it was like a comedy school type of place, but she said they're doing a comedy music show. You should try and get on that. And so I called them up, and they put me on, and I had 3 songs to play, and I went up, and that was my first official comedy gig. So this would be 2004, I think. And I did the show, and I have a recording of the show, and I can't even bear to listen to it now, but I have a recording of the show, and I did my couple little songs, and the MC that night was a lady named Lynn Ruth Miller, who at the time she was 72 or 73 and starting her own comedy career, and she was the MC. And she had some funny stuff. And afterwards, she said, I need a guitar player for my act. Do you want to play guitar? I said, well, what are we doing? And she said, well, you're going to play Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols, and I'm going to throw lingerie at the audience. And I was like, how do you say no to that? Of course I'm going to do that, And so she started taking me around to some of the local clubs and the bar gigs and one-nighters and things like that around town. And we were doing this bit. And she was already in. She'd already been in comedy for a year and a half, and knew people. And so she started going, hey, why don't you give him, he's got some stuff, why don't you put him up? And they would go, hey, can you do 7 minutes? And I'm like, 7 minutes? Man, I played 4 hours with my band the other night. Of course I can do 7 minutes. And 7 minutes is an eternity on a comedy stage, I found out very quickly. So she started just getting me these sets around town. And I was playing my couple little songs. And
That's a really short. I mean, did you play a song, or did you do?
I would do like 2 songs in 7 minutes, little introduction on each one, do my couple of songs and get off. And that's not uncommon. 5s and 7s are, bread and butter in the comedy scene. That's our workout gigs when we just are going around town doing sets, is 5, 7, 10, maybe 15. A headlining set on some shows around here is 20 minutes. And I'm like, that's not a headlining set. That's sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then when you go on the road, that's when you're doing 45 minutes or an hour. That's a real headlining set. So if I'm on the road, then I'm going to do an hour. My feature act is going to do half an hour, and there might be an MC that does 15 up front. But a whole comedy show is over in 90 minutes. And if it goes longer than that, the crowd's they're wasted. They're not going to pay attention anymore.
Right.
So because you have to be so much more focused for a comedy show than you do at a band gig, right? A band gig can go 3 or 4 hours because you can listen in the background. You can go get a drink, whatever. And you can't do that in a comedy show. If you're not paying attention, you're not getting the show. And so it's such a focused attention span that the show itself has to be shorter. And so they'll go for about 90 minutes. But Lynn Ruth, she always hated to be called Lynn. Lynn Ruth started taking me around town, getting me sets. And I started catching some flack because the traditionalists don't like guitar comics. You're a guitar comic. And to me, it was just another venue to play. I didn't think of it as anything different. It's just a different venue to play. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to play these kinds of places, then I should figure out how to actually do comedy. And I bought some books. I've never used a joke that I ever wrote out of one of those books, but the exercises were good to kind of get me thinking in that standpoint. I started watching comedy in a different way. Like I said, I was always a fan, but I started watching it for technique and structure and things like that, rather than just passively listening to it. And that's how I learned how to do comedy. I mean, I've had, classes here and there from, stuff and books, and you pick up tips and techniques anywhere you can. But really it's about, well, I've got some jokes. Let's get on a stage and see if these jokes work. Oh, they didn't work. All right, let's go back and rewrite them, and let's see if they work the next time, And it's just getting up over and over and over and over and over and over. And you go out, 5-6 nights a week and do 5 and 10 minute sets in as many places as you can until you get the hang of it.
Now, a lot of those places, they're free, right? I mean, they're just giving you a chance to cut your teeth, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you'll show up and you get a drink ticket and $10 in a lot of these places, you know. But that's where, like I said, those are the workout gigs. Those aren't the places where I'm concerned about making money. Those are the places where I'm going to work out new material and see
Right.
how it flies with an audience, you know. And then I take it on the road. I'm finally going back on the road in a couple weeks for a West Coast run, and I'll get to go out and stretch out and do my hour in a few places. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. Because I used to do 150, 200 shows a year, and
Yeah.
now it's I haven't slept in my own bed this many nights in a row since I can remember.
I remember before the pandemic, a couple, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I did see that you had come that we were coming to Michigan. You played in Royal Oak, Ferndale.
Royal Oak, yeah, that was my
Mhm.
very first headlining weekend at a club at the Comedy Castle there. That's such a great club. He hasn't booked me since, which is funny. And a friend of mine sent me a message a couple weeks ago with my headshot on the wall that I'd signed for them after that weekend. He's like, "Hey, man, you're on the wall." I was like, "Great. Would you tell them to book me again then?" I made the wall. Can I get a date?
Yeah, booking. I mean, you have to? Sometimes you said you've had to book your own gigs, though, right?
Well, I do act as my own agent right now, um, but it's a mix of like regular comedy clubs like that, which might be Friday, Saturday, or Thursday through Saturday, or Thursday through Sunday in some very, very rare cases. And then there'll be like, the sports bar that does a Friday, Saturday somewhere. And then there'll be one nighters where it's a Wednesday night and it's comedy night at this dive bar and you're going to play there. There's house concerts and corporate shows and casinos and so many gigs that I couldn't do as a musician. Casinos are a great example. If I were to go into a casino as a musician, they go, "Great, what kind of covers do you do?" And you can't
Right.
go play original songs in a casino. Nobody wants to hear them. But if I go in as a comedian, I can play my original songs as long as they're funny. And so I can go in and play. That opened up the world of playing casino gigs to me, which are fun. They're not always the greatest shows. Some of them are killer. Some of them are a drag. But the hotel accommodations are nicer, and they usually feed you really well. So I don't mind playing the casinos.
I was gonna say they must pay pretty well too.
They pay okay, yeah, depending on where you are. I mean, the comedy is not a big paying gig at that level. There are ways, if I'm corporate gigs, pay great. College gigs pay great. One nighters and club gigs pay all right. There really hasn't been a raise in pay for comedians since the early 90s. A lot of these bookers are paying the same rates that they were paying in 92.
Wow.
Which
Why?
which because there's so many comedians willing to take work. That's why. And we don't have a union or anything like that. And if they go, "Oh, you want more? Never mind. I'll just book the other guy that doesn't want more." There's, once you've got a draw, just like anything, if you've got a draw and you're doing door deals, you're going to make more money. So
Is
in the
that
places where I can do a door deal, then I make more.
is that pretty much some myths? I mean, some of the myths about comedy is, that they do get a lot of money. As far as that goes, if you're a headliner, you make all the money. And it's easy to break in and all that everything I've ever read says that doing comedy is one of the hardest disciplines. One of the
It
hardest.
is. It is.
It's
Having done music, having done theater, having done, various art forms, comedy's the hardest, man, because you are alone behind a microphone and the entire show is in your hands. And if it doesn't go well, it's your fault. It's not like having a band around you where you can blame it on the bass player.
right.
And so it's tough. It's a very difficult art form, but that's the cool part about it as well, is that challenge is there. And I go, when I walk on that stage, I go, this is completely up to me. It's completely up to me how much fun these people have tonight. It's completely up to me how much money I'm going to make tonight, because there is a merch table after, and that's where there's more money from the merch table than there is for the gig, depending on the gig. If I'm doing a corporate gig and they're paying me a ton of money, I don't do a merch table. But when I'm playing a sports bar in Medford, then definitely that's where the money is, and
Right.
and so it's not, you don't get rich doing comedy unless you're in that upper 1%, just like anything else.
Right.
I know what Eddie Griffin gets for a casino gig, and it's way more than I get.
Yeah, but you're no slouch though. That's the thing. Like I one thing I want to emphasize right now is that you're no slouch. I mean, you've toured the country.
Yeah.
We appeared on stage with some very well-known people. I'm saying well-known people. I know one of the names, but like I said, I'm out of touch as far as like some of the comedy guys. I mean, like
Yeah.
I know some people are funny, but as far as stand-up goes, I'm sort of out of touch with that, and I
Sure.
admit that.
Yeah, I don't do I honestly don't open for a ton of people because I kind of jumped from feature to headliner in kind of a sort of a quick way, but when I feature, I usually feature at places where the headliners aren't that well known either, you know, and so it's sort of a weird dynamic with that, but I'll feature for people that comedy people know, you know, more so than the general public. But everybody's great. There are so many awesome comedians out there that nobody knows. Just like there's so many awesome musicians that nobody knows. I had a new fan come into my community just in the last couple days, and he watched my live stream today, and he said, "How long have you been doing comedy?" I said, "It'll be 18 years in October." And he's like, "Why have I never heard of you until 2 days ago?" And I said, "Because there's so many of us that
Yeah,
it's easy to miss. You know, it's
that's the
easy
other
to
thing
miss
too. I was
people."
going to mention, like, I was looking at your background, and I was looking at all the posters you have and whatnot, and I'm looking at there's a tons of names. I'm going like,
Yeah,
never heard of any of these guys, and I'm going
right.
like, but I'm sure they're damn funny. I'm sure they're good. I mean, it's
Yep.
very rare that you really, I mean, face it. Let's be honest. I mean, it's a really, I mean, you got to have some skin like Godzilla when you do comedy because, and
For
if you
sure.
don't, I'm sure. I mean, you walk out there. I mean, it takes courage to walk out there anyway.
Yeah.
But once you go out, because like you said, it's all on you.
Yep.
If you don't make it, it's yours. If the material's not funny, it's you.
Yep.
Um, but I mean, I think a lot of people think that comedy is easy. They feel they're at a party, they
Yeah.
say a few things to their friends crack up at it. Look, I'm Nicolas Cage. And then do a little bit here,
Yeah.
or let's go, look at Sleepy Biden, or make political jokes. But it's easy when it's around your friends and family. But when you have to do it in front of strangers,
Yep. Yeah.
that's
One of the funny things you'll see is somebody like at an open mic doing comedy for their first time, and they brought a bunch of friends and family to watch them do their 5 minutes at this open mic, and they kill because it's their friends and family. And then you see them 2 weeks later at their fourth open mic, and they're just bombing. They're eating it hard, and they're like, "What happened?" It's like, "Oh, there's regular people here tonight."
right.
you know, and I mean, killing at your first gig is almost the worst thing that can happen to a comic because you get a taste of the good life before you're ready for it, and you're just going to eat it for the next 6 months before you get to that point again.
You
I
know,
For me,
that's
it wasn't. I never felt like I started comedy. I felt like I was just moving into a different venue and doing the same thing I was always doing, and then just developing it from there. I mean, I was going to open mics and had a merch table, and everybody was like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
right. So how would you describe your comedy?
um, Smart and silly is kind of what I go for. Um, I like silly, but I like silly when it's got some intelligence behind it, and I like smart as long as it doesn't lose its sense of play. Um, his art is one of my absolute comedy heroes, and Eddie's a she now. I keep forgetting Eddie's a she now,
Oh,
and
what?
Eddie is a she now.
Eddie who?
He goes
Eddie who?
Eddie Izzard, British comic.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I remember Eddie. Yeah.
yeah, and Eddie Izzard is an absolute hero of mine. Just an absolutely mind-bendingly awesome comic. I love the way that she uses history and just things that nobody else is talking about on stage, but does it with a degree of silliness that belies the complexity and the thought behind it all. You know, and so I love that kind of stuff. I love when it's smart, but it goofs around on itself too. And so I try for that kind of stuff. I try to, like, I was just working through my new show today, doing some editing, and I ran across a bit where I discovered some new facts about the subject, and I went, oh, now this bit feels way too surface. Now I have to rewrite this entire bit,
What do you mean by
incorporating
what surface?
it's it's a joke about, it's a bit about, it's a sequence of dick jokes, to be blunt about it, but it's dick jokes in the context of Roman history. Okay, and that's the kind of thing where I'll go, okay, it's dick jokes, but it's Roman history dick jokes, and I found out, I was reading about the subject a little bit, and I was like, oh, there's more to it than this. Now I need to dig deeper before I put this bit on stage. And I was going to put that bit on stage this Saturday, and I don't think I'm going to now. But I like to do the research behind what I'm talking about, and something
Sure.
deeper that I can do here. It can be silly, it can be dirty, but there's got to be something deeper below that as well. So it's not going to be just a dick joke. It's a dick joke about ancient Roman statuary, or something like that. I have no problem
Now,
with dirty. I just want some.
do those jokes play differently in different regions? I mean, a dick joke
Yes.
might work in California, but down in Alabama, maybe not so much.
The other way around, honestly.
Right? Yeah, why am I not surprised?
Yeah, it's really the other way around. I find that, I mean, you're the audience that's in front of you. The decision then becomes, how much do I want to pander to this crowd and what they're expecting and what they want? I want to stick to what I want to do. And there's always a give and take there. And you want to find the happy medium. You want to find that audience's line is, and just step just beyond that, because that's where the best stuff is. And so if I'm doing a show where then I have to find that audience's line on the clean side, step just on the other side of it, and that's where the best stuff is going to be. Or if they go, well, we want a really dirty show, well, then I have to figure out how to make it smart too, in order to keep my voice in the mix. And there are some comics who they say, I have to be able to kill in any room for any audience at any time. And I got over that a while ago. I am out there to find the people that like what I'm doing. And if they don't like what I'm doing, then I don't really care that much. That's fine. It's not for them. In the same way that I always think of it I always think everything like a musician does. When Prince was opening for the Rolling Stones and got booed,
Yeah,
he got booed off stage on that
yeah, got
tour.
booed off stage. Yep.
He didn't turn to his band and go, well, let's play a Creedence Clearwater Revival song that this audience will like. Right? He just kept playing Prince songs.
Right.
And it's the same thing. I'm not going to switch up what I'm doing. And, I have ways of dumbing it down or smartening it up in the moment, even with, bits that I've, that are written and I've done 1,000 times. I can dumb it down or smarten it up where I need to. But I'm not going to really change what I'm doing all that much just because an audience doesn't like what I'm doing. I will always make sure to change it up enough so that they're having a good enough time where I'm going to get rebooked. And it depends on where, what it is. If it's a bar gig that I'm doing once in the middle of nowhere, then I don't really care that much. They're gonna have a good time, but they're gonna do it on my terms. If it's
Is that, you mean when you walk in there, like, like I noticed that some bands will do this, like if there's nobody there versus people, when there are people there, they'll just look at it and there's two ways to approach it. You can walk in there, see there's nobody there, like I'm here now, right? Like I'm looking around, I'm seeing like there's three people here, so I'm bombing up here. Or you can turn around and sit there and say, well, instead of just, I'm dying up here, and then you turn right around and sit there and say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and continue to ask good questions. I'm going to bring in some new comedy here. I'm going to try some new material, like maybe something I was going to think about doing on a bigger venue. I'm going to bring that out now and just run it out here, just to be able to run it out here.
Sure. I mean, the size of the crowd matters in some ways, just because a bigger crowd's going to laugh easier. And a smaller crowd is difficult. The smallest show I ever did was a casino gig that wasn't promoted very well, and I did an hour for 2 people. And afterwards they came up to me and they said, that was so much fun. That's the best comedy show we've ever seen. I said, thank you. Would you like to buy a CD? And they were like, nah. And they walked out. And I was like,
yeah.
So
yeah,
that was the smallest show I ever did. The smallest show I've ever heard of, and this isn't even my story to tell, but there's a guy named Gabriel in Washington. Why can't I think of Gabriel's last name? Sorry, Gabriel, if you ever see this. It was a great comic. I can't think of his last name for some reason. Gabriel was telling me he did a show in a club. He was booked a weekend at a club, and it was snowing sideways. It was just blizzard time, right? And nobody showed up for the gig. And he said, he turned to the manager, and he said, well, I guess we're not doing the show. And she was like, oh no, we're doing the show. And he's like, there's nobody here. And she said, well, if you don't do the show, you're not getting paid. And
Of
he's like,
course.
okay, guess we're doing the show.
Yeah, of
And so he
course,
went.
yeah.
He goes, who's good? He goes, there's nobody here. She goes, I'll watch. Great. So he goes up and starts doing his show. Halfway through, the phone rings, and she leaves to answer the phone, and then never comes back. So he's literally doing his show to an empty room, and just spewing jokes into the ether, so he can get his paycheck at the end of the night. Which is that's a garbage move. Most clubs, if something like that happens, they'll pay you anyway.
Is that a
Good clubs
garbage
will.
move? Is it a garbage move? I mean,
It
I
is.
can.
So
Okay.
here's the thing. Here's a big difference between the comedy industry and the music industry. Part of the reason that I can tour nationally and go to all these different places is not because I have a draw in all those places. It's because the club has a draw in all those places. Because people will still go out to see comedy in its general sense without even knowing who is on the bill. They'll just go, let's go to the comedy club tonight and see a show. Whereas with bands, people go see a band because they want to see that band. You know, like I'm sure you saw it 1,000 times where people would show up to see that band, and then the next band would
Yeah.
come on, and the whole crowd would cycle, right?
Yeah.
And you'd get a whole completely new crowd in there. Comedy doesn't work like that. People will go out and see comedy. And that makes it a little bit harder for the comedian because it's people who may not know what I do and may not necessarily like what I do when they get there. And so that's where I have to meet them halfway and adjust my material. I'm going to pick this bit and this bit and this bit that I know this crowd's going to like. And then maybe I'll slip in this one that they probably won't like, but I'm going to slip it in anyway. But the majority of it they're going to like. Whereas I don't have to be responsible for the draw. The club is responsible for the draw.
Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, that's one thing I'll say as comics goes that, and is more so than touring bands. I mean, is that you're right. You don't have to worry about the draw. That's not, a band does.
Yeah.
If you're
To a
touring,
point.
if you're touring, you gotta have, you gotta have something going for you. You gotta have an album out. You gotta be, either coming out or you gotta be on a label or something. You gotta have a hook. I
Yeah.
mean, just for this to show up and play a gig without anything at all, nobody's going to do that. I'd rather I'll book 3 local bands before I book a band that's, I'm calling from Washington. I want to play your room. It's
Right.
just like, okay, well, what label, are you on a label? No. Do you have an album out now? No. Have you got an album out? Or, if I called my local radio station, will they know who you are? No. Then why the hell am I booking you?
Right.
You
Yeah. And it's just a different business model. I mean, comedy is starting to get a little more that way. Certainly if I go to a place and I have a draw in that city, that's where I'm going to make more money because I can do a door deal. I'm going to make more on merchandise, things like that. So if I go to St. Louis, I know I can fill.
Oh, no. He froze. Hi, Diana.
Oh, we're back. All right.
Okay, and we're back.
Yeah, we're back. So yeah, it depends on the market. If I can go into a market and I know I've got a draw there, then it's going to be better for everybody. I want to be able to draw at all those clubs, and that's why I work so hard to build my own base of fans. Because it's going to be better for me. It's going to be better for the club if I can go in there and go, yeah, I can fill half your room and you take care of the other half. And it's more of a partnership that way.
Promoting's a way different game now than when you and I were cutting it around. I mean,
For sure.
I mean, it's so much more accessible and so much more easier. I mean, honestly, there's absolutely zero reason not to have a crowd now. Before it's like I never heard of you. And your reach was that small. But social media has been able to anybody can be anybody.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had social media like we had today back then. Oh,
Yeah.
Clubs is still be in business.
The trick is cutting through the noise because it is a much more open, democratic place to put art out. There's so much more of it. you know?
Yes.
And so the work then comes in being able to cut through the noise, do something that everybody else isn't doing. Yeah, I run ads on Facebook that get people to message me so that I can send them something to listen to. And one guy was just like, "Why don't you just put up a YouTube like everybody else?" And I was like, "Because everybody else is doing it. And how's it working for them?" Right, exactly. So send me a message if you want to hear it, you know? And it's just, there's still, just like in the old days, there's lots of bad advice. And there's lots of stuff that doesn't work that people keep doing anyway. And
I would tell
it's,
people of all the disciplines, of all of it, I would sit there and tell you the hardest thing to do is comedy. I've known that. I mean, I've read this, I've seen, I'm just like, it's not easy. It's very, very, it's funny because we
yeah.
talk to a lot of actors on here, and
Mm,
we always are amazed by one thing. We always amazed by a comedian could do drama, but a dramatic actor cannot do comedy. You
yeah.
either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
You either have the sense. I mean, it has to be innate. It's just like you have to know that you could do the material, you could write the material, and you could deliver the material. And as much people like to think they're funny, they're not, and they probably never will be because you got to have a little bit of gift in it.
Yeah,
There's
it's a different. It's a learned skill. It's a science as much as it's an art. There are laugh triggers. There are joke formulas that we use, and I can
Yeah.
look at a premise I've written, and I can look at it, and I can imagine now what the laugh is going to be like, and be pretty honest about that in my head, and be able to go, okay, I need to strengthen the premise, or I need to use a different joke formula here, or I need to write 4 more punchlines to tag it up, or whatever it is. So it's a science as much as it's an art, and it can be learned. Like I said, I wasn't the class clown. I wasn't the guy that was always making jokes with my friends. It's For me, I really come at it like a songwriter, in that here's something I've composed and I want to show it to you now. It's the same reason I don't do a ton of crowd work and things like that. I don't improvise a lot on stage. So I'd like to be better at that, but for me, it's a composition that I'm going to now show you. Um, and so it's practice like anything else. Every comic is garbage when they first start out, whether or not they're doing, getting laughs or not. Nobody's good at it when they start out, and you get
No.
good at it by writing and editing and performing, and writing and editing and performing over
I
and
think I
over and
think that's
over again.
probably the one part about it that people are probably shocked about is the fact that there's so much writing. A lot of people think
Oh
they
yeah,
think they could get 6 newspapers, read 6 newspapers, and come up with a routine. Well,
yeah,
let me tell you about what happened today.
yeah,
I mean, it's not that easy. That gets old.
yeah.
You got to sit there and quite honestly, if you don't do the work, that might work that day, but if you're not taking care to write your routines down
Yeah.
and then honing it the next day, the next night you pop up, you might not remember everything you said the night before. Um,
There are comics that work stuff out on stage that don't necessarily write. They'll go up with a 3-word phrase, and then they'll just start riffing on stage, and that's a particular writing technique that works for a lot of people. It's not the way that I work. Mine is very composed. I sit down, I type everything out, I rearrange words to the nth degree until I've got the shortest setup and the punchiest punchline, and if I flip these 2 words, I'm going to get a bigger laugh. So I come at it from a much more composed, scientific way of thinking about it. That's always been the way that I've thought about things anyway.
Now,
Um,
band members have one advantage that I've never seen. I've never seen a comedian do this, but there's one thing a musician can do and does, and they don't get, no one thinks twice of it. But I've never seen a comedian do this, and that is have a set list.
oh, I do. I do. Because yeah, it's a little bit frowned upon in the comedy community for some reason to have a set list. Most comics will, if you're doing a longer set, like if you're doing 5 or 10 minutes, yeah, you don't. It's pretty
No.
easy. That's going to be 2 or 3 bits is all. If it's a longer show, most comics will write out a set list in the green room, and then memorize it and stuff it in their pocket and go do the show. Or the ones that don't tend to have a little bit more free flow between their bits, where it doesn't matter if this one goes before this one or vice versa. They're separate enough bits where I can do this and then I can do this, and there's not a through line for it. in my shows, when I'm doing a headline show, there's a through line and there's a very specific structure to the show where if I do this bit earlier, it's not going to fly. I have to gain their trust before I get to that bit. This bit I can do at the beginning because it requires less trust from the audience, and I can do that. And I have thematic elements that are going through the show. And so I don't always, as I'm working out a show, I don't always remember the order the stuff's supposed to go in. And so when I'm rehearsing, I go from a fully blown script, which my current show is, 30 pages or something like that. And then I go to a sort of outline version of it. And then I go to an abbreviated outline. And then I go to a set list where it's just the name of each bit. And I'll take a set list on stage with me just so I don't lose track.
Where do you put it at?
What's that?
Where do you put it at? Like in a sleeve pocket, or?
No, I will set it on the stool next to my glass of water. And so anytime I go to get a drink of water, I can take a glance at the set list. And by the time I've really learned a show, I'm really not looking at the set list that much. The set list that I carry around to gigs, and I keep 6 or 7 copies in my wallet, is my current show. And then I have another column of older bits that I can go back to if I need them, that I still like doing, stuff from my last 2 or 3 specials that I can go back to. And then I have a list of current songs and a list of catalog songs that I can do. So I've really got almost 2 hours of stuff on the set list that I can then pick and choose from for my 30, 45, 60-minute set that I'm doing up there. But it's in a way where everything stays thematically and structurally in the right place of the show. And I don't end up doing things that aren't going to, that I can't do either because I haven't gained the audience trust yet, or if I do the dirty joke too early, it's hard to go back to the cleaner bits later on and things like that,
Right.
So I try to keep things in a specific structure, but
I'm trying to
is tiny.
I'm actually really trying to see you as a dirty comic, dirty bits, and I just can't. I just see you as, I see you as, I could take you to a I guess, just a crowd of families and cut you loose, and you would just kill. You would just kill.
I am considered a clean comic in a lot of circles. I've had people come up to me and go, "Wow, that was really great. You did such a good, clean show." And I'm like, "Were you listening?" Because the difference
it's true though. But is this true? It is much more difficult to do a clean show than it is a dirty show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because you can just tell dick jokes and drop F-bombs in some audiences, and you'll kill. You'll do great. I don't like to do that because
you mentioned certain phrases will set people off. And
sure.
When you said that, the one thing that always makes me laugh, I don't care who says it or when it's said, but it's when someone says, "Shut the F up," I don't know why that is, but every time I hear that, it just makes me laugh,
Sure.
Someone will be on a movie or whatever and says, "Turn around, just shut the fuck." It's like it just never fails to make you laugh, even if it's an action movie, it can be action and super tense or a horror film or whatever. But you hear someone crack off that, shut the, it just makes you laugh. It's like
one of the laugh triggers is shock, and so shock will. Anytime you can throw a little bit of shock into a punchline, that's going to trigger a laugh. If that's all you're doing, then it becomes just that, and they're laughing at the shock. They're not really laughing at the jokes. And so that's where that comes in. So I don't necessarily swear a lot in my shows. But there's definitely sex jokes. There's definitely, like, I don't like playing for an audience that has kids in the audience because it does get uncomfortable. And also kids aren't interested in it, and so I can work clean. I've got a whole set list that's just clean stuff that I do for corporate gigs and stuff. But when I do something dirty, I try to make it smart dirty. And the people that go, "Oh, it was dirty, but it was smart," I like that, and I like that. It's the way my brain works, So I don't work crispy clean, but I still come off as clean just because I'm not throwing F-bombs around all over the place. But I do have what you were talking about a second ago. Years ago, there was a club in San Francisco. It was a Tommy T's. It lasted all of like a year and a half. And they called me and they said, "Are you in town this weekend to headline? And I said, yeah. And I said, why so late in the game? And they said, Eddie Griffin canceled. And he had, there was a whole story at the time. They said, Eddie canceled. Can you headline this weekend? I was like, yeah, sure. Did you tell people that Eddie Griffin's not going to be there? And they were like, kinda. I was like, great.
Oh,
Okay, all right.
man.
So they're expecting Eddie Griffin, what's up with white people, kind of stuff. And and instead the long hair white kid walks out on stage. And I had I put the rest of the build together. I had a disabled Asian guy open for me as the MC, and I had a Caribbean black guy as the feature. So we mixed it up pretty good. And I thought I got to put some color in here because it's going to be a crowd of color, and I want to mix it up. So we went in, and every show that audience hated me. I got nothing out of those people, and I just kept working it, and I won them over by the end of every show. It was the hardest weekend of comedy I've ever done in my life, and I was a better comic because of it. But it was a Saturday 8:00 show, which is always the best show, but this one was rough. And there was these two women in the audience who would not shut up. They just kept heckling and talking to each other, and I was working so hard, and they just kept talking over me. And I lost it at one point, and I yelled, "Shut the fuck up!" And it broke the tension in the room, like you were saying, and it got a laugh. And the two women came over and hugged me after and all this kind of stuff. I literally had that audience dancing by the end of the show, up out of their seats dancing. And it won them over, but that was the icebreaker. I don't like to snap like that on an audience.
Oh, who doesn't?
Yeah, and I don't want to do that, but they just put me over the top that night. And I saw my feature act, I saw him literally fall over backstage. And when I did that, he was like, "Oh my God." He said, "I've never seen anybody do an hour of comedy in 30 minutes before." Because I was just talking, just keep talking until you win, And sometimes that's what it is. Just keep talking until you win. But yeah, so I have snapped on an audience.
Timothy's saying sometimes it's funnier that way, Phil. Not necessarily clean, but smart. Funny stuff. Yep, smart, dirty. Yeah, I mean, you can tell good jokes without dropping. Like I thought Steve Harvey. He used to do a dirty set, and then he went over to clean.
Yeah.
And he was just as effective clean as he was dirty. I mean, he really was. He's just a funny guy. Whatever he says, you're gonna laugh. Yeah. And and he's smart. He's smart doing it. He says, and he's a really. It's one of the only like maybe 10 comics that I actually know. But I do know that because I saw the Kings of Comedy. I watch that thing like once a year.
Yep.
And
it's classic.
Yeah, it's class. Oh shit, that thing's so funny. But I remember when he said that he was going to go clean. He says I'm no longer going to do that kind of comedy. I'm going to do family comedy or close to it. Yep. And he's done that. And I've heard some of his sets, and they're funny as hell.
Sure.
I mean, they're smart, they're witty. But let me segue because I guess we got to talk about that because I mean that's part of the job. Hecklers. I mean that's. Yeah, I mean, I saw Jamie Kennedy's film about that, Hecklers.
Yeah.
I saw that, and I've seen comics for the most part. People always want to be a part of the show. They always want to be part of the show when they're out there popping off until they are part of the show. And it's like one thing I've learned and watched is this: don't heckle a comedian. You do that, right. You are just going to reap the whirlwind. You were going to get your ass kicked up there because they're funny and you're drunk.
Yeah, more than that, we have the mic. We're louder than you are. I'm so lucky in that I don't get heckled that often, and it's because I'm not as antagonistic as some comics are on stage. I've grown a little more in that direction over the last couple of years, but some comics invite the heckling just by the vibe of their comedy. And that's the style. And that's fine. There's nothing bad about that. It's just their particular style. But I don't get heckled that often, which is really nice. When I do, there's different kinds of hecklers. There's the malicious heckler that really doesn't like you and, is mad that they paid $20 to see you. There's the person that thinks they're helping the show. There's the drunk bachelorette party. There's the unintentional heckler. Like I was playing in Chicago one night, and there was this lady that just had a really weird laugh, and she was laughing at everything, and it was such a weird laugh that it was screwing up the show. And it was like, well, how do I deal with that? And I had to play with that. But if it's a malicious heckler, or if it's somebody who thinks they're helping, you play with them differently. A malicious heckler, I will just try and infantilize them a little bit, and I'll be like, "Oh, use your inside voice." Basically, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, so just pipe down, Chucky. And I'll just kind of talk down to them a little bit, and usually that does the trick, and they'll shut up. The people who think they're helping the show have to be explained a little bit, like, "Okay, I got this. I'm the professional. They're paying me to do this. You can be quiet now." And so, or sometimes you play with them a little bit, and then just go, talk to them. I will most often just ignore them. I will ignore them.
Do venues actually, do they help you with that? I mean,
they will. Yeah, some good venues will. A good venue has a code phrase that tells security, "Hey, we need to get this guy out of here." Like some clubs I've been to, if the comic on stage says, "Hey, get this guy a coffee on me," that means kick this guy out, please. So the clubs will have a code phrase sometimes. Good venues. Bad venues don't do anything about them, which sucks when it happens.
Because you don't want to embarrass everybody.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because you can't really say, "Oh, kick that guy out," because then the rest of the crowd turns on you a little bit. You have to be careful with how you deal with a heckler. If it's somebody that if they're not being malicious about it, then if you snap on them too quick, the rest of the crowd will turn on you. So you almost have to put up with it a little bit and play with them until the rest of the crowd gets annoyed with them, and then you can snap on them. And that will happen. That will happen sometimes as well. But things like bachelorette parties are one of the worst things you can ever see in a comedy show, because it's the night is all about them, and you have to shut that down as quickly as possible.
Right.
Okay, we've all seen your little penis straws and things like that. Great, you're getting married, fantastic. We're moving on now.
Right.
And so there's just different kinds, and you have to be aware of, if I do this to this person right now, what's the effect on the room going to be? Because a comedy show is all about the chemistry of the audience that night, and it's different every single night, and you have to figure it out every single time. I had a bit that I was doing years ago, and I put up a video on YouTube of 2 different shows where I was doing the same bit at the same venue, and it was 2 shows that night. And the first show killed, destroyed. It was great. Second show bombed, and I did it exactly the same way for both audiences, the exact same bit. And it was an illustration of, here's how much the composition of the audience matters sometimes, way more than what the comedian is doing on stage. People listen to my stuff every day and send me comments about it, and they go, "Oh, this is amazing. You're the best comedian I've ever heard." And the next person goes, "Nah, it's not for me. Don't like it. You suck." And I go, "All right, well, it's the same joke either way." So
Right.
not much I can do about it. It's all what's in the listener's head. So we always have to be aware of, if we're going to go in on a heckler, what's the effect on the rest of the room going to be, And so we try and do it in a humorous way if possible, and sometimes we have to have them kicked out,
Man, it must be sort of rough though if you got a guy like the opener, and he goes out there and he's got like 15 minutes, but he leaves the room feeling edgy and aggressive. Then you have to follow that. That's going to be a little bit daunting.
Yeah, for me it's like, and I don't really tell my openers what to do, because I don't like to be told what to do when I'm a feature, when I'm an opener, because there are headliners that'll go, "Don't do this, don't do that, and don't do that," and it's like, well, you should be able to follow me, huh? It's you're the big person here, and so I don't tell my feature acts what to do. But it is a little bit harder if they go up and are super dirty, and then I have to, mop up the stage a little bit after when I go on, and change the tone of the audience. Or if they're super crowd worky and improvisational, if they do a lot of crowd work, that's much tougher to follow, because the crowd is now expecting that the show is more about them than about the show, which isn't the way I work, But I just deal with it. If it happens, then I have to use my skills to turn it back to what I'm doing and go, nope, here's the show that we're doing now, you know? Uh, so you just, you deal with whatever the room gives you, and it's different every time.
Now I know there was a few years ago Joe Rogan got his nose bent out of shape or over Carlos Mencia, saying that he was
Yeah.
stealing jokes and root jokes from people.
Yeah.
How does that really work? Because I mean, aren't jokes just how does that how do you steal a joke when there's just there's so many different ways to deliver it? I mean, if I talk, let's say I decide to talk about Blue Oyster Cult, and I'm getting up there this is what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm
Very,
listening to the
very
record,
topical, very,
and
very
I'm getting
timely.
yeah, I write a set about Blue Oyster Cult, and I go out there and I pop it off. But
Yeah.
there across on the East Coast, there's a guy out there doing maybe he's done a Blue Oyster Cult set beforehand, and all of a sudden he's like, maybe he sees my set and he says,
Yeah.
"Well, he ripped me off," but I don't know who this guy is. I've never
Yeah.
seen him before. I'm only going based on my own experience. I mean, short of verbatim repeating the joke word for word,
Right.
which is is impossible unless you do it. Um, but unless that happens, I mean, isn't it just coincidence when jokes get repeated by the same type of jokes get repeated by comedians? And I
Yeah.
mean,
And I mean, the thing with Mencia was that it was nearly word for word with what he was doing. There's been other accusations, Amy Schumer and things like that, where if you put those videos side to side, you go, oh, that's really close, you know?
yeah,
It's uncomfortably close where it's not just parallel thinking. And it honestly rarely happens. It just rarely happens. I mean, Robin Williams had a reputation a little bit for that, but it was because he was taking in so much information and so much material that he would forget sometimes that it wasn't his joke. And he would always, if it was discovered, he would pay the person for their joke, you know. So he would always make good, but he wasn't doing it on purpose necessarily. And they're usually, if somebody is just legit stealing jokes, it's usually somebody who doesn't know any better. It'll be an open micer who's doing Eddie Murphy jokes, and you go, no, that's not how it works, dude. You got to write your own stuff. More often, it's just parallel thinking. You know, like it happened to happen. There's a comic in San Francisco that started doing a premise very close to one of my premises. In fact, the exact same premise, but he wasn't using the same punchlines. He wasn't using the same language. He had a different take on it slightly. And I saw him do it one night, and I said, hey, just so you know, I do the same premise with kind of the same thought process on it. I've been doing it for a couple of years. And he said, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And I said, great, we just won't do them on the same show then. I said, if you're on the show, you can do it one night, and the next time I'll do it the other night, whatever. And now it's a bit, I've already recorded it. It's in my last special, and I'm done with it. So now I don't care. Mine's out there. He still does his every once in a while. And it's just not that big a deal. The people that blow it out of proportion and mistake parallel thinking for joke theft, that gets annoying. And it's just like, no, we just happen to think of the same thing. There's a limited amount of subjects that we can really talk about on stage. And especially with topical stuff and the news stuff and all that, there's so much that gets repeated. You can see it on Twitter every day. Everybody comes up with the same 3 jokes. And so it's bound to happen. And so I just try to be nice about it. And if I see somebody doing something similar to what I'm doing, I'll let them know, hey, I do something similar to that too. I've been doing it for a while. Or if they've been doing it for a while and it's something new of mine, I'll usually trash it. I'll dump it and write something else. Unless it's really, unless it's really, really something I need in the show for some reason or whatever. But, I've always been told, oh, somebody stole your joke. Well, go write another joke then. We have lots of things to write, so just go write another joke. But the stuff like Mencia, it was too close for comfort when you A/B the videos and you go, oh boy, yeah, that's really it's tough to come that close to the exact language by accident.
Yeah. Casey's mentioning here, our friend Casey's sitting there going, Amy Schumer ones were really similar and had a lot of examples in a relatively short time frame. I guess that's probably one of the reasons why we're not hearing from her recently, huh?
Well, that, and she's a mom now, so she's not working as much. That's more of the reason. But um, I mean, it didn't hurt her career. She kind of got past it. She stopped doing that and started writing stuff. Amy Schumer's fine. She's very funny. And some people think they can get away with it for a while. Other people use writers, like Chris Rock has writers.
Oh yeah, a lot of them have writers. Jay Leno was he was a writer for Jimmy Walker.
For
Um,
sure, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so they'll use writers. I mean, like the way Chris Rock does it is he'll put the bulk of the show together, and then he's got 6 or 7 comics that he knows and respects and works with, and he'll put them in the audience and have them watch the show and write tags and write toppers and that kind of stuff. And he pays them. He pays them good, and so that's fine. Most of us don't have the budget to hire writers, and so
What
we have to do it all ourselves.
what are tags and toppers?
So, like, the basic joke structure goes setup, punchline, tag, or topper. And it's basically just another punchline that builds on the previous punchline. I think that, I don't know, the myth is always that Phyllis Diller had the record for like 14 tags on a joke or something like that. But the more you can tag a joke, the more laughs you're going to get out of that premise. And it's just punchline, 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 punchline. I write in a joke structure, a joke format like that, but I tend to, I'll do setup, punchline, another punchline, and then I'll swerve into a different aspect of that topic, so that I can talk.
Can you give us this example of that? Maybe do a little piece that you could do so we can see it.
Let me think. So I talk about that a couple specials back. I do a bit about going to Hawaii for my brother's wedding, and we started to have trouble as soon as we got there because we couldn't find our condo because all the streets have super long Hawaiian names. They only have 13 letters in their alphabet, so every street is named Makalaka Uka Makalaka Avenue.
Yeah.
Punchline. Even my GPS was like, turn right on. Second punchline. We're going to have to turn around, dude. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Third punchline, right? So those are tags. We're just taking the joke further. I know it doesn't play as funny when you're just telling the person the joke.
It actually sort of funny when you said the words. I was like, yeah, that's exactly probably how it is over there.
Yeah, it is. And so, but that's the structure. It's funny when you explain comedy, it loses all of its humor. Explaining comedy is like, what they say, explaining a joke is like dissecting a frog. I can't remember what the rest of that is. Anyway, explaining humor makes the humor go away is part of the problem. But that's the basic idea. So it's set up, punchline, tag as much as you can, pivot into the next version of whatever you're going to talk about, so that I can talk about a subject for 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time, and just mine all the little details out of it.
So I mean, I want to talk about a little bit about you. You mentioned you set up your own shows. So how does that work out? I mean, do people send you? I mean, you're basically booking a show. So now you're doing what I used to do. So how do you like that? How do you like booking your own shows, and what do you look for when you do so?
Yeah, I mean, I don't do it so much anymore. Usually when I'm, booking myself onto shows, there's lots of little regional producers. There's the Funny Business Agency, and they book 20 rooms in the Midwest, and then there'll be the Bonkers Clubs that book mostly in Florida, and they got some Nevada stuff, and then there's bookers. There used to be the Tribble Run up in the Northwest. Dave Tribble just retired, but those were like boot camp gigs. And so I'll contact those people and go, hey, I'm coming through, and they'll go, great, here's 4 or 5 shows you can do. But I have produced shows in the past, and it's not that much different from producing a music show. It's find a venue, find the comics that I want to put on it. I used to book variety shows where it would be comics and jugglers and magicians and dancers and bands and things like that. I always enjoyed doing those, and then promoting the crap out of it. Because again, it's in this industry, it's more about the producer promoting the shows more so than the comics. Even though that's starting to change, people really do encourage the comics to promote now, and so it becomes a team effort. But It's a lot of work. I mean, you know how much work it is to produce a show, and
Yeah.
it's a ton of work. And there are people that produce weekly shows, and that is a giant headache. I was producing monthly shows.
I heard what you just said too. I want to talk about that for a second.
Sure.
A lot of the venues now are going back there and telling comics to to promote themselves.
Yeah.
Um, is that something that's something you probably have always done though, haven't you? From because of your
Yeah.
band days.
For sure. Yeah. I came at it with that knowledge, with that DIY attitude of no, I gotta put my all into it, you know? Um, and bookers appreciate that. Now it's become more common where comics know that they need to build their fan base, that they need to, work the show a little bit. They need to,
Isn't it something else though? I mean, you've seen this from the ground up, basically from when you started. I
yeah.
mean, you know what? This is another thing we talk about with a lot of the actors on here and whatnot. A lot of them still don't quite get it,
Mm,
and that is, you know, I don't know. I mean, like I probably should. I always do my promotions. Like I said, I always do them really, either the day of because of the, because I always feel like if I promote a show a week out and I don't, if I promote it out and nobody's going to remember it by the week because I'm not really sure if people are actually going to, put it down, like, okay, I'm going to show up for this show. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I always find out, like, I always find it better to promote the day of or the
sure.
day before.
Yeah.
But I'm probably going to rethink that. I'm probably going to try to, promote a week out maybe,
Mm,
and just hopefully, maybe just I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna try to do something different because what I'm doing now, this isn't working for me. I'm not really happy with. I'm not really because. But the thing is, though, it's like you have to promote yourself now.
yeah.
There's nobody else doing it. If you get out there and you push yourself, and it's like it's no longer just be able to walk through the door and throw your hat on stage and expect to have people there.
Right.
You
Yeah.
really have to bust your ass at it. And I work very hard at doing this.
Hmm.
You know this. You know how you know my work ethic. You know
Yeah.
Jimmy's work ethic. I mean, we mean of all any buyers that we know or any buyer, talent buyers. I really hard pressed to say I don't know that many that outworked us. They may
Sure.
might have had an outdrew us as far as crowd goes, but we were never outworked.
Yeah. Yeah. With something like this, that sort of day before promotion becomes the most important part of it because everything flows past these timelines so fast that, yeah, if you do it a week before, nobody's going to remember it. I do a live stream in my private Facebook community every Tuesday, Tuesday 12:30 in the Philagellis community, and people know it's going to happen on Tuesday at 12:30, so the consistency of it is helpful. But the actual promotion, I'd put up a post at 8:30 in the morning and another one at 12:15 and say, "Here we go." And it's the consistency of having it at that time that brings people in. If I were to do other things, I'm doing an online show this Saturday, which is a public show where I'm going to do my whole hour as a warm up for the tour next month, and that one I'm promoting week. 2 weeks of promotion. I'm doing emails. I'm doing text messages. I'm doing, all sorts of stuff for that one because it's a one-time thing. And so I need to put it in their heads more often. Hey, here's the date. Get your tickets. We're doing it up, But with something that's happening regularly week after week after week, there's sort of a consistent promotion that happens. There's a club that happens in Oakland called Comedy Oakland. And it's I think they're Thursday through Saturday. They got different comics every night. It's a super fun room, but they do all their promotion through Google Ads. And Samson, the guy that runs it, he's become a master at promoting comedy shows with Google Ads. So when somebody types in comedy show in Oakland, boom, there they are, and that's how they get their audience out. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and there's a lot of different time frames to do it, but it's really the consistency that makes it work. So I don't think it's a bad idea that you're promoting this the day before, because as long as you're doing it the day before every week, then people get used to when it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we started a half hour. Most of the time I start at 8 instead of 8:30. And
My fault.
well, it's funny because most of the time it's, especially for Tuesday show, it's okay. It works out.
Yeah.
But today, I noticed that there's a lot of people that were doing a lot of things at 8 o'clock. And so I knew I was going to be right behind the 8 ball right then, because
Yeah.
that's what happens, but that's the nature of the game.
Yep.
All you do is you look at it and you go like, I got to come with something new.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
That
so
was the funny thing when everybody started getting online and live streaming when everything was shut down. It was like, oh, this is great. I can do shows from home. Great, cool. Oh, I'm at 8 o'clock on Saturday. So is Bruce Springsteen. So it's like now you're competing with people who you would never really be competing with in real life, unless you happen to be in the same town on the same night. Oh, now Bruce Springsteen is doing a live stream on Saturday night at 8. There's nobody going to come see mine. But it's the your specific crowd of people that you're always playing to, and you just have to grow that crowd of people.
right. What would you tell someone today if they walked up to you and say, Phil, I want to get into the comedy game? What are 3 things that you would tell them that are like are positive, and 3 things that you tell them that they should watch out for?
I will always tell them, put together 5 minutes of material. Don't worry whether it's good or not. Just put together 5 minutes of jokes. Go find an open mic, rinse and repeat. That's the way that you get started, because you can't. I've talked to people where they're like, I want to be a comedian. I've written an hour of material. And I'm like, you don't have an hour of material. You have 2.5 minutes of material by the time you put that on stage and find out what's actually funny. And that's really the thing. I mean, as far as things to watch out for, there's unscrupulous bookers who will try not to pay you, all that kind of stuff. I've been pretty lucky with that kind of stuff too. It's about networking and being. I hate that word. It's about being a part of the comedy community and getting to know the other comics in the area, because that's who's running shows in the local area, is the other comics. And so it's about being friendly, being cool, showing up on time. Don't run the light. Do your set, be as funny as you can, and then get off stage. Because I made the mistake early on. I was doing a Wednesday night at a club. It was supposed to be a 7-minute set, and I didn't see the light. That was they always give us a 2-minute light, or a 1-minute light or something. Hey, flashlight. So usually a red light. I did not see the light at this club, and I ended up doing 17 or 18 minutes at this instead of my 7 minutes, which is a cardinal sin in comedy. I was pretty new at the time. I never did get booked at that club. The club still doesn't like me. And it ate into the headliner's time that night, which was even worse.
Ooh.
And the headliner was somebody that I wanted to be friends with just because he was a cool guy. And we did end up being friends, but it took me a while to sort of work my way back into his good graces. So that's what I always say. Show up, do your jokes, don't run the light, get off. And just be cool. Just be cool to everybody.
I mean, I don't know if for you personally, I like to think not, but that is the case, though, isn't it? Some comics, they're really paranoid and possessive, and they tend to be a little bit thin-skinned. I've seen several that have commented on that. Yeah,
that can be.
That's their job, is to poke fun. They're poking fun at everybody.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, if it comes back to them, it's like all of a sudden it's like it sort of hurts their feelings a little bit. I would think that you guys be bulletproof.
Comics are odd people. They're very intelligent. The green room of a comedy club is hallowed ground. It is the most exclusive, coolest place you can ever be, because you're in there with your people, and everybody is on, and the green room is the best place in the world. But they are people who found their way to comedy because something else wasn't going right in their life. I am a very stable person as far as comedians go. And I've had other comedians be like, could you be more messed up, please? Because you're just way too stable and normal and happy. And so, comics, the whole tears of a clown thing, I think, is overblown. But comics do come to comedy. Some of it do it for therapy. They're talking out their feelings and their thoughts on stage and things like that. And it can be uncomfortable at times, especially if it's not done well.
Some of them are, they come across as completely angry. Like I'm angry.
Sure.
Like, okay, we get
And
that, but
a lot of
you know,
times that's a persona, because we all have to find our persona on stage that we can build the rest of our show around. One thing I always like when I'm watching other comics, I always admire when they're doing something that I couldn't get away with my persona on stage. And our personas on stage, our characters on stage are always sort of an amplified version of ourselves, but not not who we are all the time. You know, I remember coming off stage one night and I was standing. It was a band gig actually, and I came off stage. And I was standing there with my drummer, and somebody else came up to us, and he said, and he was talking to me, and the guy goes, "Wow, you're really different off stage than you are on stage." And my drummer said, "Oh my God, if he was like that all the time, we could not be around him." He goes, "He would be super annoying if he was like that all the time." So it's an amplified persona on stage. And that may be angry. It may be mopey. It may be silly. It may be whatever it is. It may be angsty. There are archetypes to the comedy characters we play on stage, just like there are for acting characters. But characters, I mean, comedians, you know, there's the sort of idea that they're a damaged lot, and they're to a point there. I just think a lot of comedians are a little more in touch with their inner lives than other people are, and more able to talk about it sometimes. Some don't let us into their personal lives at all. Jerry Seinfeld's a great example of that. We don't know who Jerry Seinfeld is at all based on his act. Whereas somebody like Bill Burr, we get a little more insight into the way that he thinks. Or, you know, Tig Notaro, who's very, very, very confessional. And they're all funny. It's just different ways of coming at it. But yeah, some comics are thin-skinned because that's the type of people we are. We were the kids that got picked on in school. We weren't the kids that were on the sports teams, you know? And so that tends
but you're a
to
rock
hit some of the
star.
triggers.
I mean, you were a rock star. I mean, you played music. You
Yeah.
got to play in front, outside that one show. I mean, but you played a lot of shows. You played a lot of shows. I mean, for the one bad show, you had 300 really good shows.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
It's
uh,
all just building up the tolerance to that kind of thing. And the thing with comedy is that most comics are introverts. We're not the type of people that feel comfortable in a room full of people where we're just mingling and talking to people. And
no, that's not you.
I've had to grow past this idea, because I was the same way. And I still
Really.
have to force myself to, if I'm at a gathering, just a regular gathering, I still have to force myself to go talk to people. I'm just as introverted as anybody else. And so,
I always, that's one of the things I always admired you. I mean, you could go inside any show on any venue, and I mean, anybody saw you, you were always really nice. I mean, you were very, very polite, and and you were, you always knew what was going on. You
yeah.
always knew what was going on at other venues or anything else like that. You sit there and talk music to people. I mean,
Yeah.
I watched. That's one thing about working in a club. It's like you hone your people watching skills, and this from from touring. But you
Sure.
sit there and you just watch people, and it's people watching, and I watched all the time, even though we, because you just you see how they interact, and I'm going like,
Hmm.
because like I said, me and Jimmy used to talk about you quite a bit, and the one of the things it says was he's a professional. That's the word we use. He's a professional.
That's
You're a
what I always
professional.
tried for. Yeah.
Yeah. I
But I
mean, he's
was, it's,
professional and he's courteous. He's respectful. He never assumes. I mean, that's what I mean. It's sort of funny I'm telling you this now because I know you probably never heard this before. But yeah, you had a fan club. I mean, we really did, and so, when I saw you touring, as a stand-up comedian, I was so happy for you. I was like,
oh,
well,
I'm glad.
I'll be damned. This guy, he's killing it.
Yeah.
Uh,
The thing with a comedy show is that we are introverts and we do have to force ourselves to talk to people, but a comedy show is a controlled environment. It is, okay, I'm in charge. These people have come specifically to hear what I have to say, and they're in the frame of mind to hear what I have to say. I don't have to walk up to a stranger, try and ingratiate myself to them, and enter a conversation that they may or may not want me in. It's just a different dynamic. From walking into a room full of people. You know, before my shows, I will go around and talk to the audience individually before my shows. Not always, because I still have to force myself to do that. It's still kind of uncomfortable for me to walk up to a table full of people and go, "Hey, my name's Phil." And they go, "Oh, the guy we're here to see?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they go, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And so there's still a controlled situation to that as well. But just a gathering of strangers, I don't. Yeah, I need some recovery time after that kind of thing. And I need recovery time even after a show, because there is a social aspect to it. I'm talking to people before the show. I'm then doing the show. I'm then talking to people after the
Yeah.
show and
Yeah.
taking pictures and signing autographs and selling merch and all that kind of stuff. And I need a dark room and some downtime after, just to refuel myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very much an introvert myself. I mean, you get out there, it's like I was never the one that would go out there and flow easy. It
Yep.
was always it's always been hard to talk.
Yeah.
It's easier doing something like this because I don't have to necessarily be in the same room with somebody. And so I'm able to relax a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, would I do this at a house show? Never. Never. Would you do a live show and interview somebody? No. No,
Yeah,
I couldn't do that.
it's all different. And I mean, a lot of it is practice. I am so much better at all that kind of stuff. It was funny because I had to I was working with a production company, and we were looking into booking some rather high-end comics for very large shows. And so I was the guy that had to call their agent and talk to him. And I was having breakfast with my girlfriend one day, and I said, "Oh, I got to call this guy's agent back." And she heard me on the phone in my office talking to this guy, and she goes, I'm really proud of you. She goes, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would not have done that. You would not have called somebody on the phone and talked about thousands and thousands of dollars of payment with them for somebody that you've never met before." And she said, "I think that's really cool that you can do that now." And it's and I hadn't noticed it because I do that now. And but it is practice. It's just practice doing it. It's forcing myself to go talk to people, and it's forcing myself to network with people, and it's forcing myself to do all this stuff and put myself in situations where I have to do it. And it gets easier in some cases where I can walk into a room and people know me already. And in that case, it's friends. If I go to the Punchline on Sunday night, I know 80% of the comics there, and we're just going to hang out and talk because that's people I've known for a decade.
Sure.
But going now, there's a lot of new comics in the scene. If I show up at Punchline on Sunday nights, now I'm going to know 20% of the people there, and I got to get to know everybody again, because a lot of people started comedy during the pandemic for some reason. And,
yeah, look what we have for our president. I mean, he's a walking punch. He's a walking punch line. I mean, he must have been. He's got to have been the best. He's got to have been the best thing that happened for comedy.
Horrible.
He's just the gift that kept on giving.
I don't know a single comic who wouldn't rather have a functioning country than a Punchline. So he was. And the other thing with that kind of stuff is that it's so done so quickly. With topical daily news kind of stuff, you have to be on top of it, and it's blown out on Twitter by 3 p.m. Every joke has been done. That's why I don't do a lot of topical comedy, because chances are by the time you get to the club that night, everybody's heard that punchline already from 15 different people. And so anybody that does topical stuff now, man, that is a hard road to stay on top of it. All the Colbert and, all that kind of stuff. Man, those writing staffs work really hard to find the stuff that's not out there yet. Yeah.
I actually interviewed somebody who was quite funny. She's a terrific writer, and of course, I got her real early, so I don't think I'll ever get her back on this situation. Her name is Chelsea Devance.
Okay.
And I talked to her, and she's a comedy writer. She's written for many TV shows and whatnot.
Nice.
She just finished writing she was head writer for the first season of the Colbert Show. I guess the new one.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah. So. But John Shelton mentioned here, John Horton mentioned here. Sorry about that, John. He says comedians have to have hard time in the cancel culture society. That that's a perfect segue. I didn't plan that. I didn't plan that at all. But that is something that I definitely want to talk to you about real quick. This will be our last topic. But let's talk about that because I asked you this, and you surprised me with your answer. And I asked you if comedy in danger?
No.
Is comedy in danger of being slowly eroded? Because I've seen it. I mean, I know comedy has had several incidences where they've had to endure. Like when Lenny Bruce came aboard. Yes, Cheetah. This is the Cheetah. All right, thanks, Cheetah. All right, yeah, thank you. You want to get down? Want to get down? You can't steal scene from me. Gosh, I mean, so that's what happens when you have a Cheetah. But I know Lenny Bruce is probably the very first comic that when he came out there, he was a lightning rod like no other probably before or since. But then you have comedians like Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Dave Chappelle now, that have been caused people to. It just seems like now it just seems a little bit more like when people raise hell about it. It might be like a few politicians raising hell, and then it goes away. But now it seems to be more of a concentrated effort.
It's
like they're trying to shut him down. They're trying to force his livelihood. They're attacking him, his person, and his livelihood. Look. Comedies, that's what they do. They make jokes about everybody and everything.
Sure.
So if someone wants to get out there and crack a joke about transsexuals, guess what? You're part of a culture. You're part of society. You're not bulletproof. Right. I mean, and that's it's like black comedians. They get up there and they talk about white people. Mm-hmm. Well, white people get up there and talk about black people. You got to be able to feel free for that to go because I do feel this way, and I could be wrong, and I may be wrong, but I have always felt like whereas black comics, they'll cut loose on anybody. There's everybody's fair game, everybody. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's some like white comics. They always feel like they're tied to the post. They're not really allowed to cut loose unless they are that top 1%.
There's the internet amplifies everything, and also everybody's kind of stuck in their little bubbles, and so a lot of times when we see something in our feeds that everybody's talking about, that's such a tiny percentage of people that are actually talking about it. And I don't think the whole canceled thing or whatever, Chappelle's career hasn't been destroyed by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. I
use him though, but see, he's bulletproof. All right, he's in the top 1%. So yeah, he can, but the regular comedian walking up there and doing the same material that he's doing, he's not gonna get away with that.
Depends on who it's for. It depends on who it's for. Everybody has an audience of somebody that's going to enjoy what they do. I mean, a case in point is there's a couple of comedians that have gone full right wing, red state comedy. And
Joe Rogan.
Well, I mean, Rogan to a certain point, not in his comedy really, more in his podcast. But there are names most people wouldn't know, but. Because we're not their audience, and they've gone full right wing. They do right wing jokes. They do jokes that most people would find abhorrent. I find them abhorrent because they're crap jokes. They're terrible jokes for the most part. Just bad structure. I get offended at bad structure for jokes. Because I can look at a joke even if I don't agree with the joke, and I can go, okay, that's a well written joke, even though I don't agree with it.
Well, how do you define what it's a joke though, and what is rhetoric? I mean,
that's a good question.
You can sit there and hide behind the microphone saying I'm a comedian, but if you're sitting there and you're popping off garbage,
right?
There's a difference between poking fun at a situation, or whatnot. But when you're sitting there and you're poking fun deliberately at It's
Yeah,
a real thin line.
it is, and it comes down to that joke structure. We talked about, a setup, punchline, tag. If I can see that the structure is there, that they put some sort of original thought behind it, and there's a point that they're making, then even if I don't necessarily agree with that point, I can see where I go, okay, that's a well-written joke at least. Oh God, what was that one Sammy Obey did recently that the crowd hated and I thought was hilarious? Um, I can't remember. It was a school shooting joke, already a touchy subject.
Someone did a school shooting joke.
Yeah, my friend Sammy Obeyed. Um, Sammy's fantastic. He's wonderful. And he is and this was a little bit out of character for him, which I think is why the audience turned on him a little bit. And he was just starting to do this joke. I'm sure he's worked it out now and it works great because everything he does works great. But I can't remember exactly what the joke was. But it was a school shooting themed joke and the crowd just froze up on him. And when I listened to it, I was like, I don't completely agree with the punchline, even though he was doing an ironic punchline, really. And the crowd didn't read it as irony. The crowd took his word for it, and I was like, nope, they missed the irony part of it, which is why it didn't work. But a topic like that will freeze up an audience,
Yeah.
if you don't do it right. And he was just starting to work
I
on
just
that bit.
can't. Honestly, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I can't really see how a school shooting is funny on any level.
I wish I could remember the joke itself, because I listened to it, and it was because it was an irony joke. Irony jokes are, I'm going to say something that I don't actually believe in, but it's going to be funny because I said it in this way, and that can be done. Where when I see somebody doing a joke that is a badly structured joke that doesn't have an original thought in it, and they're just spewing some garbage belief, then I go, that's not comedy. Now it's rhetoric, which is different. Does it get the laugh? And that's the thing. But I mean, the cancel culture per se, it doesn't really. I mean, if we can't keep Bill Cosby from doing shows, then who are we going to keep from doing shows? Louis C.K. is out doing shows again, and that was a situation where he did some bad things. He abused his position in the comedy world to do things that he shouldn't have. He wasn't doing what Bill Cosby was doing, and Bill Cosby's out doing shows again. Who's paying to see Bill Cosby right now? I don't. Those are the people that I don't want coming to see me. If you're going to see that, then don't come to see me. It's just not going to work out for you. And somebody posted my Instagram on my YouTube. Thank you, Mr. Bones. I appreciate that in the comments. So everybody has their audience, and for especially like the race stuff that you were talking about, I do a lot of race material in my shows. Not so much in the news show. The news show has a lot more religion
race material is fine. It is as long as it's as long as it's like I said, as long as it goes both ways. As long as
and
you don't.
It's how you do it. And some of the jokes that I'm thinking of in my last show, I didn't word them right, or I didn't have the right intent behind the words when I said them originally, and I did piss people off. And I had to go, I have to change my intent behind this. I have to change this word for this word, and it started to work to the point where the one of the shows we filmed for my last special, there was a lady doing sound, and she came up to me after, and she hadn't seen me before. She was just doing the house sound, and she said, as a black woman. And I was like, uh-oh, here we go. She said, I want to tell you, I really appreciated how you approached that material. I don't see it that way very often. And I was like, oh, okay, good. I win. And she goes, as a half Asian black woman. And I was like, oh no, here we go. And she said, I really appreciated how you approached that material. So I look at, because honestly, when I'm doing that kind of material, the jokes kind of come back to me a lot of the times. There are references to African-American people and Asian people in the jokes, but the joke isn't about them. The joke is about me. And that's where it becomes a more personal thing. Like I talk about how I was doing a bit where my girlfriend is Chinese. My girlfriend is Asian because I'm white, and that's how it works in California. And so I was doing a bit about interracial relationships and the fact that we tease each other with race jokes in a relationship like that. And the people in the audience who have never been in an interracial relationship will clam up at that. They will get very uncomfortable when I talk about that. But I can see the interracial couples in the audience be like, "Oh yeah, we totally do that," you know? And so it's about just how they relate to it. And more often when somebody gets offended at a joke, they're getting offended on somebody else's behalf that isn't offended by that joke, you know? But it does take some practice to go, "Well, how can I talk about this in a way that's
Well,
going to
I can handle
accurately
it.
portray what I want to say?"
I mean, I have no problem as a whole. I mean, race jokes. I mean, they've always been funny. I mean,
Yeah.
again, my favorite. They just always works for me. Kevin Hart, Richard Pryor. I mean, they get
Mhm.
up there or whatnot. I mean, it's just funny as hell. It's just
Yeah. And if it's
and
done right, if it's done
interracial
well.
relationships. I mean, I can sit there and I can laugh at that too. I
Yeah.
see that can see a word. You get a wealth of jokes with that.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
and sexuality too. Like I said, if Chappelle wants to crack loose on the Rainbow set, what he's doing is he's including you into conversations. What he's doing, whether just because it's not necessarily something you're maybe ready for or prepared for, but there are others, and he's including you in the conversation. You
Mhm.
know, pro or con, he's including you. He's not
Yeah.
excluding you. He's
Yeah.
not going to sit there and not talk about you like you don't exist.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
and
It's
the cancel culture is to me it's just like if he starts making comics, like I said, he's bulletproof, so he's 1%. But it's not so much what happens to him; it's what happens to the guy down here.
yeah,
Because
but it doesn't though.
now you got club bookers sitting there going like, you're not going to be doing those type of jokes here, right? And then
Yeah.
that's your first move towards censorship,
It
And,
doesn't happen that often. Most club bookers will book somebody they know is going to work for their audience, and they'll book somebody but rarely do they ever go, "You can't do this." I can think of a club I played in Chattanooga where I walked in and the club owner, very abrupt guy, I said, "Hi, I'm Phil." He said, "You have 20 minutes. Don't do crowd work." I said, "Okay, it's nice to meet you too." But that's all the
don't do
direction
what?
he gave me. Don't do crowd work.
What's
Don't
crowd?
go into crowd work is, "Hey, what's your name? What do you do?" Just riffing off of the audience, which I don't do anyway, so I didn't care. So that's fine if I get a direction like that. But I've never walked into a club that says, "Don't do race jokes" or "Don't do religion jokes" or whatever. I played a place in North Dakota, and the house manager said, she said, "Pretty conservative around here. You might not want to do politics jokes tonight." And I said, "That's fine. I don't anyway." And there was a guy sitting at the next table in the bar there, and he goes, "I'm no snowflake. You can do whatever you want." And I was like, "That's exactly why I'm not going to do that here tonight."
Yeah.
you know, and so it's you read the room and you do that kind of stuff. I played I played a casino in Reading last year, and I knew I'd played that room before. I know what that room is like. And I left out all my religion jokes. I left out all my social commentary jokes. I left out anything that was remotely political. I talked about travel. I talked about learning a language. I talked about food. I talked about stuff like that. And at the end of the show, this lady comes up to me and she goes, "You need to be a little less liberal for this room. We're Trump people here." And I was like, "What did I even do? I talked about learning languages and traveling around the world. Apparently that's too liberal now." And I was like, "Okay." And so there's no room where somebody's not going to get offended at something, because there's always a target to the joke. And where it kind of goes a little bit now is that a comic knows that the safe zone is making fun of themselves. And so a lot of comics will just stick with that. "Oh, I'm a mess. I'm going to make fun of myself." And that's, to me, when I do that kind of stuff, it feels a little navel gazy. And also, if I wanted to be picked on, I'd go back to middle school. And so I don't
Right.
like to dunk on myself too much. There is that. I usually at the beginning of the show, there will be something a little bit self-deprecating because it brings the audience in. If I've just done something that's very pointed and there is a definite victim in the joke, then I'll come back and do something self-deprecating as well, so that they know I'm playing both sides. But I don't make that's not my whole character on stage. My whole character is
You think
going
comedy as a whole it will survive this?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, because we just adapt the way that we're talking about people, I have a friend, Irene too. She's a lesbian. She is an Asian lady that looks like a young Asian boy. That's her opening joke, and she was doing a bit one night about pronouns and saying that she was having trouble remembering somebody's pronouns or remembering what name they wanted to be called by if they were trans, and she caught flack for that, and it was like, no, I'm part of the community. I can't talk about it. Oh, my even better. Was it Solomon Giorgio? There was somebody. No, it wasn't Solomon Giorgio. I was working with another comic. He's a black gay comic, and he was doing material about being black and gay. And after the show, a lady who was neither one of those things walked up to him and said, "You can't talk about those things on stage."
See?
And he said, "What?" And she said, "You can't talk about being black and being gay on stage." He said, "But I'm black and gay. What else am I going to talk about on stage?" But those are a small group of people. Nobody else in that room thought
it
that
just
last
seems
night.
like it's small. It's a small voice now, but unfortunately, with social media, as you said, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to spark a fire. When you make a fire, all you need is a newspaper and a match, right?
Yeah.
And yet you can burn down the whole damn house.
But
right?
in a situation like that was unreasonable of her to say that because he was black and gay. Of course, that's what
it's just that the fact that people get they feed off that culture. They feed off maybe 6 months ago that woman would have never said anything, but now she reads or hears something about about Chappelle, about what he did, and all of a sudden there she goes. She goes, oh yeah, they're right, and so now she feels emboldened, and she goes straight up there and she says something like that.
Yeah, but it blows over so fast.
Or worse, she writes about it. She writes about it, or she gets on social media about it. And maybe and like you said, I mean, maybe I it's going to be very interesting. I'm really interested in seeing how it works when you go back on the road. And I'm gonna have you come back after your tour, and we'll catch up. And so that might be in April, maybe, and have you come back in April. I want to hear about your tour, and I want to see if anything happened. And it'll be interesting to see what society has changed, because this is the first time you're going to have been out in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So I have a feeling things have changed since then. We'll see how far.
There's always somebody that's going to get offended, and my job is to try and do it in a way where they grasp the intent of what I'm talking about, and they're not because usually when somebody gets offended, it's because they listen to the words instead of the joke. Like there was one night I was playing a show in Oakland, and I said, my girlfriend is Asian, and that's as far as I got, and the lady in the audience went, no. And I said, what? She said, you can't say that. I was like, I didn't say Oriental or something like that. I said, my girlfriend is Asian. She's Asian. That's what do you want me to say? And if you would let me get through the rest of the joke, you'll understand why that's pertinent to the joke. So there's always going to be people that kind of jump the gun and they just listen to the words instead of the meaning of the joke. And there's not much I can do about those people except for look at what I'm doing and go, is there a better way that I can do that where that doesn't happen, where I can get them to the punchline before that happens? And that's the editing process. But there's some people where that's not going to work with. I have a lot of religion jokes in my new show because the background as sort of the structure of the show is a trip to Italy that we took in 2019 just before the pandemic. And that's the sort of the skeleton of the show is stories from that trip interspersed with other things that aren't related but fit into the structure of that show. And so I have a joke where in Rome we took one of those true crime tours where they take you around all the historical dens of thievery and murder and corruption, and there was just one stop at the Vatican. And so I have jokes like that are gonna offend people, that they're gonna jump, they're gonna freeze up at. And then I go on to make jokes about the Pope, and they're not jokes about the Pope. They're jokes about being the Pope. And the current Pope used to have a job as a bouncer at a nightclub in Buenos Aires. How am I not going to write something about that?
Right.
And so, but just because I'm talking about that subject, people will freeze up. Or just because I talk about African Americans, regardless of the context, even if it's my relationship to that culture or whatever it is, people will clam up sometimes. And it's just my job to figure out, okay, how do I get them to the punchline without them clamming up. And you a lot of times it's just the way I say it, and sometimes it's just that they're not going to pay attention once they've heard a trigger word, and that's fine. They're not the people that are going to follow me to the end of the earth to hear my next joke, and it's not for everybody. And so that's the way I always come at it now. It's not for everybody.
I'm gonna close our show with one question from John Horton. He wants to hear this, and I thought we'd end up on a lighter note here. He says, "What are your guys' favorite comics of all time?" So you're the comic. I'm gonna let you name your 5 favorite. That you. What are your 5 favorites?
Eddie Izzard, Greg Behrendt, Christopher Titus, Ralphie May. And man, the last couple years, Jackie Cation. Jackie's new special is amazingly good, really good. So those would be my top 5.
Now people can buy your specials, right? Through philjohnsоncomedy.com.
Yep, philjohnsоncomedy.com. You can buy them. The new one certainly Burning is called Burning Sensation, and you can get it stream, download, DVD, Blu-ray, and the other ones. Everything is available for stream and download, and a few of them I still have discs for. And albums, and I have music all over all the streaming platforms, and new stuff comes out every 6 weeks, and all that kind of stuff. Tour dates are on my website as well. I'm doing a show on Zoom. You're right, Jamie. Titus is awesome. He's an awesome person. I love talking with him. He's given me some great advice over the years. I'm doing a Zoom show on Saturday where I'm going to run my new show as a warm-up for the tour. So the tickets for that, it's called the Italian Hour. That's the working title. And tickets for that are available on my website as well. It's a name-your-own-price ticket, so come join us. It's going to be a blast.
I want to thank the chat for coming out and hanging with us.
Yeah.
I appreciate it very, very much. I actually thought I might be drawing crickets, but I have a very small and hearty chat. Thank you guys so much.
I only remembered halfway through the show that I could see the comments on here. I flipped it on. I would have talked to you guys more. Sorry.
But you'll get a chance to, because I mean, when are you supposed to come back from your tour?
I will be back March 20th, I think, and then I've got a few more dates around the Bay Area through the end of the month. So it's kind of a West Coast up and down run. So,
either tomorrow or day after, I'm going to get with you. I'm going to schedule another date, because I really want to know. I really want to know what it was like out there.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm playing some rural communities. I'm playing near Seattle. I'm going to have a good mix of people. So
yeah, this could be really eye opening. Yeah. I want to thank again everybody in the chat for coming out and supporting us, and me and Phil. Phil, thank you for coming out and doing this. We'll look forward to seeing you back in April. This has been really, really good. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I'm so happy you're doing really, really well. I'll put all your information down in the description box, so if people want to go ahead and pick up a disc or whatnot, they can do that. All right, tomorrow night we're back at our regular time, and we will be hopefully, if their internet isn't wonky, because it always seems to be at nighttime, but hopefully it'll be Roy and Becky from Roy and Becky's Travel Adventures. They'll be here tomorrow at 8. And then Thursday, we have our good friend Phil from Phil's Creepy Vids. He'll be here at 8 o'clock too, to end out our February. So on the behalf of me, Phil, and the Cheetah, thank you for coming, and we will see you tomorrow night. Peace.
Good night, everybody. Thanks.
Stay right where you're at, Phil.